Ladies and gentlemen, I just got back seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and I got a lot of thoughts about this movie because it's not at all what I was expecting. As always, we're going to go through the positives, the negatives, and then we'll give it a rating out of 10 for the ending. This is going to be completely non-spoiler all the way through. There's really no spoilers to talk about for this movie. A couple things maybe, but there's really no point of talking about those things, so I'm not going to do a separate video for that either. I know I usually do for Marvel films, but this time I just don't really see the point of it. So let's get right into it. For the positives, first of all, this is a very entertaining Marvel film, just like any other Marvel film, which is just something that I think Marvel's very consistent with, is just keeping the audience entertained, which is why normally audiences like these movies. They're very much people-pleasing type films, very consumable, anyone can jump into them and watch them, and you're gonna have probably at least a decent time, which is why these movies are so popular. It's why these movies sell so much, because they're entertaining, regardless of how good the quality is of the writing or the action or whatever it may be. They always make sure to keep you entertained all the way through, maybe with a couple exceptions, but they're usually very entertaining. And this one's no different. I had a good time watching it. I don't think it was boring or anything like that, but does that mean it's perfect? Of course not. There's definitely some bad things we'll talk about later, but at the end of the day, what's the most important thing watching a film is it entertaining. This one definitely delivers that. The visuals were fine, honestly. A lot of people were worried about how the visuals were going to be because there's a lot of usage of CGI in this film. It is like 95% CGI. This movie might as well be animated, honestly. That's just how much CGI there is, which a lot of people are automatically going to be turned off by that. I had a couple issues with it here and there just because they used CGI in places they really didn't have to, like certain creatures. They probably could have done a practical version of that creature, like Star Wars has been doing a lot more recently with their creatures. They've been using practical designs, practical effects, rather than just using a bunch of CGI, because sometimes CGI just looks too fake. And this movie, I just think does a little bit too much CGI, but it looks good for the most part. There's only a couple moments where I would say, not that great. But those moments are few and far between. For the most part, the visuals are great. The CGI is pretty good. And there, like I said, there's a lot of it in this film. And it's really colorful, fun to look at. Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror is without a doubt the best part of this movie. Without a doubt. If you don't really care about Ant-Man whatsoever, it's still worth seeing because what this movie does is going to be very important going forward for the rest of this phase and probably for phase 6 as well. Because Kang the Conqueror, not really spoiling anything here, but he is being built up to be the big bad of this next couple phases. So definitely you want to see it for just to get to know who this character is. You get to learn about his motivations, why he's doing what he's doing, and most of it is pretty good and well thought out, and I was all for it. And Jonathan Majors killed it. Fantastic job. We saw a little bit of him as Kang, another version of Kang in Loki season 1, and that was great, just a little tease, and then this is when we get to fully see him, and yeah, they do a lot of cool things with him. I enjoyed every second of him on screen. Maybe one or two things I didn't love about how they used his character, but it was nothing too crazy for the most part. He definitely did an amazing job as Kang the Conqueror, and I'm very excited to see him in Kang Dynasty and probably even in Secret Wars. Because this movie takes place for the most part in the quantum realm, there is a lot of interesting locations and interesting ideas they're able to explore. Like there's one area they get to which it makes it so you kind of like duplicate yourself. We saw this in the trailer. There was one little clip where Scott was being constantly duplicated, and those visuals, they can be kind of fun to watch and they can add for some interesting situations that these characters get put in. And those things were cool. There's a couple of interesting themes revolving around helping people, which, I mean, that's pretty much the theme that's used in every Marvel film at this point, but you know, it's the whole thing about like helping the little guy. That they have a couple of little themes there about that, mainly revolving around Scott's character and his relationship with Cassie, of course, his daughter. All that stuff was pretty good. Definitely wasn't the best character writing in the MCU ever, but it was fine. It was entertaining. And the ending action sequence, like I would say the last 20 to 30 minutes of the film, there's a really big action sequence that they do there, and it's actually pretty good, especially the 1v1 between Scott and Kang, which was in the trailer, but it's a really good fight scene. I definitely would say it's one of the best hand-to-hand combat scenes in the MCU, but that's all the positive I have. Let's get on to the negatives. Yeah, there's a lot of issues with this movie, unfortunately. I was really hoping to not be disappointed with this, but I was expecting like a 9, and it wasn't that. First of all, the writing is all over the place. All over the place. Not really in terms of Kang's character, like I said, he's well written, but there's so many other little aspects of this movie that just make you go, why would they do that? Like, it just, I don't get it. I don't understand the reason for it. And they do this a lot. There's one character in particular that I despise how they handle him, and that would be MODOK. Now, MODOK's been a character that was been teased quite a bit for this movie, and he's a pretty big character in the comics, so I was somewhat looking forward to seeing what they would do with him, and I don't like it. Like, it's just not good. He's probably one of the worst MCU characters of all time. It's just ridiculous what they do with him. It's not that he's too goofy. Like, yeah, he is very goofy. He does very jokey, comedic. That's kind of what I expected. But that's not the issue. The issue is what they do with him and his motivations. It's just so stupid. Like, you'll see it when you watch the movie, but it's just like, what kind of, like, he has one conversation with a character in this movie, might have been the worst conversation, worst back and forth in terms of dialogue that I've ever seen in the MCU. I was just sitting there like, what are they doing here? Like, this is actually an interesting character you could explore a little bit, but they just make him be this complete idiot. I don't know. I can't really go too far without spoiling stuff, but it's stupid. I hated it. Definitely one of the worst characters in the MCU. The stakes, although they were very high, because obviously Kang is here, the stakes are supposed to be high, I never really felt them. I never felt like the stakes were actually that high. You kind of felt it for some of the characters there, but not many of them. A lot of them I was like, they'll be fine. You know, it's one of those situations where it's like, I'm not really worried for anyone here. And when I was talking about Kang before, how I really loved his character, but there was one thing I didn't like that much, and this kind of connects to that. For Kang, when he was killing people, because there's a couple scenes where he's killing people in this movie, it's not done in a very brutal way, which I'm not saying we need to see, like, very gory, like brutal stuff, because it's a PG-13 movie. Of course, we're not going to see that. But comparing it to someone like Thanos, right? Thanos had like a sword. He was stabbing people. Like, you saw the brutality of Thanos. You saw the power. But Kang, you don't really get to see the power against other people, because when he kills people, he kills it in the most boring way possible. He just shoots a blue laser at them and they disappear. That's all that happens. They don't like die. Like, it should have been something like if they get hit with it, they get injured and they fall back and get hurt. And you can see the brutality, you can see all the bodies, stuff like that. But he just hits you with it, you disappear. So whenever he does that to people, I don't really feel the impact, because he doesn't really use that many interesting abilities that I was expecting. I was expecting him to have all these abilities up his sleeve, but it's just blue lightning. Let me just throw it at people, or not blue lightning, but like blue lasers, whatever. It's just, I don't know. I wasn't crazy about that, although his character was fantastic. I just think in terms of the action against other people, I didn't really get to feel the scariness of him because of that. So I think that was definitely something they didn't do great with. They never do anything interesting with the main characters, like, at all. The most interesting characters are probably Kang, and honestly, Janet. Janet, of course, Hope's mom. They do some more interesting things with her. They don't do really anything. I think Hope, which, this is Antman and the Wasp. The Wasp, they do almost nothing with. Like, compared to her screen time in the sequel, like, it's insane. She doesn't really have much to do in this film. Her entire arc in this movie revolves around her mother. And her and Scott, they don't do much with either. Like, it doesn't feel like an Ant-Man movie because of that. So, and a lot of critics were saying this. I read a couple reviews, not like any spoiler reviews before watching the movie, and a lot of them actually do make a lot of sense to me in terms of what they were saying about the movie not really being an Ant-Man film, but it's more of the first chapter of the Kang dynasty. That's what this movie is. It is the first chapter of the Kang dynasty. It is not an Ant-Man film. And that's fine, whatever, but I was also hoping to see some decent stuff with the Ant-Man characters, and they just don't really do much with them, except for a couple things between Scott and his daughter, which I liked, but that was really it. Hank doesn't really do much. They're just kind of there for most of the film. I don't know. They include ants in one scene for the film, and they don't really feel like an Ant-Man movie, which, I don't know, just for me it was a bit disappointing, because I was hoping for some more stuff with those characters. And last negative I want to talk about is the end credits scene. Both of them. There was 2 end credit scenes. I'm not going to go into spoilers about what they were, but they were probably some of the worst end credit scenes in the MCU. They just didn't do anything for me. I watched them and I was like, okay, like, they tease things to come, but that's it. And they're not really well done, because they kind of feel a little too much, like a little too goofy in some of it. I don't know. Wasn't crazy about the end credit scenes. They weren't bad. They were just, compared to the other stuff we've had in the MCU, like, it doesn't really hype me up as much as it should. You know, this stuff should really hype me up. And I don't feel like I got that from these end credit scenes, unfortunately. So for the final verdict, the final rating, I'm going to give this movie a 6.8 out of 10. So it's not bad. I'm not gonna be sitting here giving it like a 4 out of 10 or something like that. It's not a bad film. It's a good, solid Marvel movie, but it's just very disappointing because, like I said, I was hoping for a 9 and we got a 6.8. So yeah, if you want to share your thoughts in the comments, go for it. Let me know, did you love this movie? Did you hate it? Give me your thoughts. I definitely am still really excited for the future Marvel films. I feel like a lot of times when people see a Marvel film they don't absolutely love, they just start to say, oh, they're all dead. Marvel's done. We can't watch them anymore. They're all going to suck from here on out. I don't really think that way. I'm still very excited for the future films. I just think this one just didn't do it for me. I don't know. It really didn't. If I was to compare this to last year's Marvel films, I liked it more than Thor: Love and Thunder, probably, just by a little bit. But I don't think I liked it more than Black Panther or Doctor Strange. Definitely not more than Doctor Strange. So, like I said, wasn't bad. It was all right. Let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.